The escape pod hit the ground hard. Metal scraped against rock as it slid down the mountainside, leaving a trail of smoke and torn earth behind it. Inside, Daniel Cross gripped the safety harness with white knuckles, his teeth clenched as the world spun around him. When the pod finally stopped, he sat in silence for a moment, listening to the creak of damaged metal and the hiss of venting gas. Daniel released the harness and pushed open the damaged hatch. Cold air rushed in, carrying the smell of stone and something else. Something he could not name. He climbed out onto the rocky slope and looked around. Mountains stretched in every direction, their peaks covered in snow. The sky above was purple instead of blue, with two small moons visible even in daylight. This was HFY Prime, a world at the edge of known space, far from Earth, and far from anyone who might help him. He was alone. Exiled. Cast out by the very military he had served for 15 years. Daniel checked his supplies. The pod's emergency kit contained a medical pack, 3 days of food, a plasma pistol with 2 charge packs, and a survival knife. Not much to live on, but he had survived worse. At least, he told himself that, as he looked at the endless wilderness around him, his mind went back to the trial. The faces of the officers who had judged him. The cold voices reading the charges. Abandonment of duty. Insubordination. Theft of military property. They had not cared that he saved 300 children. They only cared that he left behind a weapons depot to do it. Orders were orders, they said. The weapons were worth more than civilian lives, they said. Daniel spat on the ground. He would make the same choice again. He gathered what supplies he could carry and started walking. The pod's computer was damaged. But before it died, it had shown him a cave system, 3 kilometers east. Shelter was the first priority. Food and water would come next. After that, he would figure out how to survive on this frozen rock. The walk took 2 hours. His breath came out in white clouds as he climbed higher into the mountains. The thin air made his lungs burn. But he kept moving. Stopping meant freezing. Movement meant life. The cave entrance was larger than he expected, a dark opening in the cliff face that seemed to swallow light. Daniel pulled out a glow stick from his pack, cracked it, and held it up as he entered. The green light showed smooth stone walls that looked almost carved, too regular to be natural. He moved deeper, following a passage that sloped downward. That was when he felt it. Heat. In this frozen place, there was warmth coming from below. Daniel drew his pistol and moved carefully forward. The passage opened into a massive chamber, and what he saw there made him stop in his tracks. 5 eggs sat in the center of the chamber, each one as tall as a grown man. They glowed with an inner light, pulsing slowly like a heartbeat. The shells were dark red, with veins of gold running through them. The heat in the room came from them, a warmth that felt alive. And beside the eggs lay a creature from legend. The dragon was huge, 30 meters from nose to tail, with scales that shimmered like dying embers. Her wings were torn and broken, her body covered in wounds that still bled dark blood. Dozens of scorch marks showed where energy weapons had hit her. Her breathing was shallow, each breath a struggle. As Daniel stepped closer, one massive eye opened. It was gold, flecked with red, and it looked at him with an intelligence that made him feel small. The dragon's head lifted slightly, and he heard something in his mind. Not words exactly, but meaning, feelings, images. The dragon showed him her death. Hunters had come. Creatures in armor with advanced weapons. They wanted her eggs, wanted to sell them to the highest bidder. She had fought them, killed most of them, but there were too many. She had flown here, to her nest, to die beside her children. Daniel lowered his weapon. He understood loss. He understood dying for something that mattered. The dragon's mind touched his again. This time he saw images of himself. The trial. The children he saved. The moment he chose their lives over his career, the dragon saw into his heart, saw the protector that lived there, and she made a choice. She asked him to guard her children. Daniel looked at the eggs, glowing warm in the cold cave. He looked at the dying dragon, her eyes pleading with him. He thought about walking away, He could leave right now, find shelter elsewhere, try to survive on his own. These were not his children. This was not his fight. But he had never walked away from those who needed protection. How long? Daniel asked out loud, not knowing if she could understand. The dragon's mind showed him images. The eggs would hatch in 4 months, maybe 5. Until then, they were helpless, vulnerable. There were others who would come looking, others who knew about this nest. "I will stay," Daniel said. The words felt heavy, like a promise that would cost him everything. The dragon's eye closed slowly. Relief washed over Daniel through their connection, followed by gratitude so deep it made his throat tight. He felt her life fading, felt her consciousness slipping away. In her final moments, she showed him one last image, her children, hatched and grown, strong and free. She would not see it, but maybe he would. Then she was gone. The great dragon's chest stopped moving, and the warmth of her life faded from the cave. Only the eggs remained, pulsing with their steady inner light. Daniel stood alone in the chamber with 5 dragon eggs and the body of their mother. He had no idea how to care for dragon eggs. He had no idea if he could survive 4 months in this place. He had no idea if more hunters would come, or when, but he had given his word. Daniel set down his pack and got to work. First, he dragged the dragon's body to the back of the chamber, treating it with the respect a warrior deserved. Then he explored the rest of the cave system, mapping out the passages, finding the other entrances. There were 3 ways in, which meant 3 ways to defend. He spent the next hours setting up a camp near the eggs. The warmth they gave off would keep him from freezing. He rationed his food carefully. 3 days of supplies meant he needed to find food fast. Water was easier. Snow was everywhere outside, and the heat from the eggs could melt it. As darkness fell outside, Daniel sat with his back against one of the eggs. It was warm against his spine, pulsing with slow, steady life. He placed his hand on the shell and felt something, a presence inside. Young, innocent, depending on him now. "I do not know if you can hear me," Daniel said quietly. "But I am Daniel Cross. I am a soldier from Earth. Your mother asked me to protect you, and I will. I promise you that." He thought he felt a response, a gentle pulse from within the egg. Maybe it was his imagination. Maybe not. Daniel checked his pistol, making sure it was charged and ready. Then he settled in to keep watch. The first night of many. The first night of a promise he intended to keep, no matter what it cost him. Outside the cave, the wind howled through the mountains. Inside, a human and 5 dragon eggs waited together in the dark, an unlikely family born from one moment of trust between 2 dying souls. 3 months had passed since Daniel made his promise to the dying dragon. The cave had become his home, his fortress, his entire world. He knew every rock, every shadow, every sound the wind made as it moved through the passages. He had survived, but just barely. The eggs were bigger now. They had grown, their shells thicker and brighter. The pulses of warmth came stronger, more regular. Daniel could feel them, even when he was not touching them. Sometimes, late at night, he swore he could hear sounds from inside. Small sounds, like movement or maybe dreaming. He had built defenses around the cave. Tripwires made from salvaged cables stretched across the main entrance, connected to rocks balanced above that would fall and block the way. He had dug pits in the narrow passages, covering them with thin stone that would break under weight. His plasma pistol had 1 charge pack left. The other he had used to collapse part of a tunnel, creating a choke point where enemies would have to come at him one at a time. Food had been the hardest part. The mountains held little life, and what existed was tough and mean. He had learned to trap small creatures that looked like 6-legged rabbits. Their meat was stringy, but kept him alive. He found plants with bitter roots that did not kill him, so he ate those too. Every day was about survival. Every night was about staying alert. Daniel had lost weight. His uniform hung loose on his frame, torn and patched with scraps. His face was covered in a rough beard, his hands scarred from climbing rocks and setting traps, but his eyes stayed sharp. A guardian did not rest. A guardian did not fail. He talked to the eggs every day. It helped keep him sane, hearing his own voice in the silence. He told them about Earth, about blue skies and green grass. He told them about the ocean, how it stretched forever and held more life than any one person could imagine. He told them about cities where millions lived together, about music and art and all the things humans created when they were not fighting. He also told them about war, about the darkness in the galaxy, the species that took what they wanted without care for others. He told them about the children he saved, about why he made that choice. He wanted them to understand, when they hatched, that strength meant nothing without choosing to protect those weaker than yourself. Your mother was strong, Daniel said one evening, sitting with his hand on the largest egg. She could have run. She could have left this place and saved herself. But she came back to you. She fought for you. That is real strength. That is what matters. The egg pulsed warmly under his palm, and he smiled. It was a tired smile, worn thin by months of solitude. But it was real. Then the alarm went off. Daniel was on his feet instantly, pistol in hand. The tripwire at the northern entrance had been triggered. Something was coming. He moved quickly through the passages, his body remembering the paths even in darkness. He reached the entrance and pressed himself against the wall. Listening, voices, speaking in a language he did not know. But the tone was clear. Hunters, talking about the nest, about the value of dragon eggs on the black market. Daniel counted at least 4 different voices, maybe more. He pulled back deeper into the cave. They had found him. After 3 months of peace, they had finally come. Daniel returned to the main chamber and looked at the eggs. They glowed softly, unaware of the danger. He checked his pistol. 1 charge pack meant maybe 20 shots if he was careful. Against 4 or more enemies with military-grade weapons, that was not enough. But it had to be enough. He moved to the main passage, the one he had prepared most carefully. This was the widest entrance, the one they would use. He positioned himself behind a rock formation that gave him cover and a clear line of sight. Then he waited. The first hunter appeared an hour later. It was a chromath, a species Daniel recognized from military briefings. Reptilian, 2 meters tall, with thick scaled skin that could turn away small arms fire. This one carried an energy rifle and wore light armor. It moved carefully, scanning the passage with practiced eyes. Daniel let it pass. 1 target was not the problem. He needed to see how many there were. 2 more chromaths followed, then another. 4 total in this group, moving in a tactical formation. Professional hunters, not random thieves. They knew what they were doing. The lead chromath spotted the eggs and hissed something to the others. They moved forward eagerly, weapons lowered. That was the mistake Daniel had been waiting for. He shot the last one in the group first. The plasma bolt hit it in the back of the head, dropping it instantly. The other 3 spun around, raising their weapons, but Daniel was already moving. He rolled behind another rock as return fire lit up the space where he had been. Human. One of them called out in rough English. You are surrounded. Give up the eggs, and you live. Daniel did not answer. Words were wasted on hunters who saw living beings as products to sell. He popped up from cover and fired twice, hitting 1 chromath in the shoulder. It roared in pain but did not go down. These were tough opponents. Daniel ducked as energy bolts scorched the air above him. The fight became a game of movement and patience. Daniel knew the cave. He knew which rocks gave cover, which passages led where, which shadows hid him best. The chromaths had better weapons and armor, but they were in his territory now. He led them deeper into the cave system, using the narrow passages to limit their numbers. In the tight spaces, only one could come at him at a time. He shot another one as it squeezed through a gap, the plasma bolt finding the weak point where its armor joined at the neck. 2 left now. But Daniel's pistol was running low on charge. Maybe 6 shots remaining. He had to make them count. The remaining chromaths were more careful now. They moved slowly, checking every corner. Daniel could hear them talking, planning. They were splitting up, trying to come at him from two directions. He made a choice. He moved back toward the main chamber, toward the eggs. If they wanted the eggs, they would have to come to him, and when they did, he would be ready. Daniel positioned himself on a ledge above the chamber entrance. It was a 12-meter drop to the floor below, but it gave him the high ground. He watched as the first chromath entered, rifle sweeping the room. It saw the eggs and moved toward them. Daniel dropped onto its back, driving his knife into the gap between its helmet and armor. The chromath thrashed, trying to throw him off. But Daniel held on. They crashed to the ground together, and Daniel rolled away as the creature went still. The last chromath entered at a run, firing wildly. Daniel felt a bolt graze his arm, burning through his uniform and searing his skin. He bit back a scream and fired back. 1 shot. 2 shots. 3. The chromath's armor held. 4 shots. 5. A bolt finally got through, hitting it in the leg. It went down on one knee but kept firing. Daniel's pistol showed 1 shot remaining. He aimed carefully, waiting for his moment. The chromath shifted, and for just a second, its neck was exposed. Daniel fired. The last hunter fell. Silence filled the cave. Daniel stood there, breathing hard, his arm burning with pain. He had won. But as he looked at the bodies scattered around the chamber, he knew this was just the beginning. He moved to each body, searching them. They had communication devices, now destroyed in the fight. They had maps showing the location of the nest, and they had a ship somewhere nearby, waiting for them to return. More would come. These 4 were scouts, advance hunters checking if the nest was still here. When they did not report back, others would investigate. Daniel had maybe days before the main force arrived. He looked at the eggs, still glowing peacefully. They did not understand the danger. They did not know what he had just done for them. Daniel wrapped his burned arm with strips of cloth torn from his uniform. The pain was sharp, but he had felt worse. He gathered the hunter's weapons, finding 2 functional rifles and several charge packs. His odds were better now, but not by much. That night, Daniel sat beside the largest egg again, his hand resting on its warm shell. His body ached. His arm throbbed. He was exhausted in a way that went deeper than just lack of sleep. "They will come back," he said quietly to the eggs. "More of them. Maybe a dozen, maybe more. And I am just one man with limited weapons and no backup." The egg pulsed under his hand, steady and trusting. "I do not know if I can stop them all," Daniel continued. "I am not a hero. I am just a soldier who made too many wrong choices and ended up here. But I made a promise to your mother. I told her I would protect you." He closed his eyes, feeling the warmth seep into his palm. "So I will try. When they come, I will fight. And if I fall, I will fall here, between you and them. That is all I can offer." The egg's pulse seemed to quicken, just for a moment. Daniel wondered if they understood. He wondered if, somewhere in those shells, the young dragons could sense his determination. He stood and checked his weapons one more time. Then he went back to work, building more traps, preparing more defenses. Sleep would come later, if at all. Right now, there was too much to do. The main force would arrive soon. And when they did, Daniel Cross would be ready to show them what happened. When you threatened something a human had sworn to protect. They came with the dawn. 12 chromath hunters, armed with military-grade weapons and wearing full combat armor. Their leader was a massive specimen named Vrex. His scales scarred from 100 battles, one eye replaced with a glowing cybernetic implant. He had been hunting dragons for 20 years, and he had never failed to claim his prize. Daniel watched them approach from his position high on the mountain slope. He had spent the last 2 days preparing, turning the cave system into a killing ground. Every passage was trapped, every corner held a surprise. He had used the weapons from the dead scouts to create explosive charges, rigged to collapse tunnels. He had only 3 energy rifles and limited ammunition. But he had something the Chromaths did not have. He had motivation that went beyond profit. The hunters moved up the mountain in a tactical formation, covering each other's advance. They were professionals, and they were careful. They had learned from the scouts' failure. This time they would not underestimate the human. Vrex stopped at the cave entrance and examined the ground. He saw Daniel's tracks, saw the drag marks where bodies had been moved. He hissed orders to his team, and they split into 3 groups. 4 would enter through the main entrance. 4 would circle around to the northern passage. The last 4, led by Vrex himself, would find another way in. Daniel had expected this. He watched them split up and smiled grimly. Dividing their forces was exactly what he wanted. He moved quickly through the passages, taking a route only he knew. He reached the northern entrance just as the first group entered. They moved cautiously, scanning for traps. They found the tripwire and disabled it, nodding to each other with confidence. They did not see the secondary trigger. When the lead hunter stepped on the pressure plate Daniel had hidden beneath loose rocks, the ceiling came down. Tons of stone fell, crushing 2 hunters instantly and trapping the other 2 in a pocket. Their screams echoed through the caves as Daniel moved on. 8 left. The main group heard the collapse and moved faster, abandoning caution for speed. They rushed into the cave, rifles ready. Daniel was waiting for them. He had positioned himself in a narrow passage with a clear field of fire. As they entered, he opened fire with one of the stolen rifles. The first hunter went down with a bolt through its chest plate. The second took 2 shots but kept coming. These Chromaths were tough, their armor absorbing hits that would have killed most species. Daniel kept firing, retreating deeper into the cave as they returned fire. The passage lit up with energy bolts, the air itself burning from the heat. Daniel felt one graze his leg, felt another hit his shoulder. Pain exploded through him. But he kept moving, kept firing. He led them into a chamber where he had rigged the entire ceiling with explosive charges. As the last hunter entered the chamber, Daniel triggered the charges remotely. The explosion was deafening. Rock and flame filled the space, and when the dust cleared, 3 more hunters lay dead or dying. One had survived, its armor scorched black, crawling toward the exit. Daniel put it down with a single shot. 4 left, plus Vrex. Daniel's body screamed at him. His shoulder wound was deep, bleeding heavily. His leg barely held his weight. His rifle was down to its last few shots. But he was not done. Not while the egg still needed him. He made his way back toward the main chamber, leaving a trail of blood. His vision swam, and he knew he was losing too much blood. He had maybe an hour before he passed out. Maybe less. He had to finish this before then. Vrex and his 3 remaining hunters had found another entrance, a small opening that led into the lower caves. They were below Daniel now, moving up toward the chamber. Daniel could hear them, could track their progress. He positioned himself at the top of the passage that led down, holding his last rifle. But his hands were shaking. Blood loss was affecting his aim. He took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. The eggs were behind him, 20 meters away, glowing in the darkness. He could feel their warmth even from here. The first hunter appeared, and Daniel fired. The shot went wide, hitting the wall. The hunter returned fire, and Daniel had to duck back. His rifle died, charge pack empty. He drew the plasma pistol, the one he had started with. It had maybe 2 shots left. 3 hunters came up the passage together, and Daniel knew he could not stop them all. He made a desperate choice. He charged forward, pistol in one hand, knife in the other. He shot the lead hunter point blank, the plasma bolt burning through its faceplate. The second hunter grabbed him, lifting him off his feet and slamming him against the wall. Daniel felt ribs crack. The air left his lungs in a rush, but he still had his knife. He drove it into the hunter's throat, twisted, and pulled. The Chromath dropped him and staggered back, choking on its own blood. The third hunter hit Daniel with the butt of its rifle. Daniel's head snapped to the side, and he tasted blood. He fell to the ground, barely conscious. Through blurred vision, He saw Vrex enter the passage, stepping over the bodies of his fallen hunters. "Impressive, human," Vrex said in perfect English. "You killed 11 of my hunters. No one has ever done that before." He walked closer, his cybernetic eye glowing red in the darkness. "Clued, but now you die, and I take the eggs." "Your effort was wasted." Daniel tried to stand, but his body would not respond. He had nothing left. No weapons, no strength, no tricks remaining. He had failed. Then he felt it. A pulse of heat behind him, stronger than ever before. The eggs were responding to his distress, to the danger. Daniel turned his head and saw cracks forming in the shells. Bright light leaked through, golden and fierce. Vrex saw it too. His eyes widened. They are hatching. Early. He raised his rifle, aiming at the eggs. No matter. They will bring even more profit. As live hatchlings, Daniel's hand found a rock. It was all he had. With the last of his strength, he threw it. The rock hit Vrex's cybernetic eye, cracking the lens. It was a small thing, a meaningless gesture. But it bought seconds, and seconds were all the hatchlings needed. The eggs exploded outward in a shower of shell fragments and golden light. 5 young dragons emerged, their scales still soft but their eyes burning with ancient intelligence. They were small, barely the size of wolves, but they moved with terrifying speed. The largest hatchling, her scales the color of molten gold, saw Daniel on the ground bleeding. She saw Vrex standing over him with weapon raised. And something in her small dragon mind understood. This human had protected them. This human had fought for them. This human was family. She screamed, a sound that made the stone walls vibrate. Her siblings joined her, 5 voices raised in fury. Vrex turned toward them, rifle swinging around. But he was too slow. The golden hatchling hit him first, claws raking across his armor. The others followed, attacking from all sides. Vrex fired wildly, hitting one hatchling in the wing. It shrieked in pain, and the others attacked harder. Teeth and claws found gaps in armor. Vrex fought back, throwing off one hatchling only to have 2 more take its place. Daniel watched through failing vision. He saw Vrex go down under the mass of small dragons, saw the hunter try to bring his rifle around for a final shot at the eggs that remained in the chamber. Daniel's body moved without thought. He lunged forward, grabbing Vrex's rifle arm with both hands. Vrex's weapon discharged, the bolt going wide. The Chromath leader turned his head, staring at Daniel with his one good eye. "Why?" he asked. "They are not even your species. Why die for them?" Daniel's answer was simple. Because they needed protection. Because it was right. Vrex's cybernetic eye flickered. "You are a fool." "Maybe," Daniel said. His hands tightened on Vrex's arm, holding it away from the hatchlings. "But I kept my promise." The golden hatchling understood what Daniel was doing. She moved to Vrex's exposed throat and struck. It was over quickly after that. Daniel released Vrex's arm and fell backward. The hatchlings gathered around him, their small bodies pressing close. The golden one put her head against his chest, and Daniel felt something pass between them. Memories. His memories. The trial. The children he saved. The promise he made to their mother. The 3 months of guarding them. Every moment of his vigil flowed into their young minds. They would remember. They would understand. They would know what he had done. "Good," Daniel whispered. His vision was fading. He could feel his life leaving him, blood pooling beneath him on the cold stone. "You are free now. Live. Grow strong. Protect others like I protected you." The golden hatchling's eyes filled with tears. An impossible thing for a dragon, but true nonetheless. She pressed harder against his chest, trying to push warmth into him, trying to keep him alive. But Daniel's heart was slowing. His breathing came in shallow gasps. He looked up at the 5 young faces surrounding him and smiled. "I am glad," he said, "that I got to see you hatch." Then Daniel Cross, exiled soldier and guardian of dragons, closed his eyes for the last time. His hand fell away from the golden hatchling scales. His chest stopped rising. The 5 hatchlings cried out, a sound of grief that echoed through the mountains. They had been alive for mere minutes, but they had inherited memories of a lifetime. They knew what Daniel had sacrificed. They knew what he had been to them. The golden hatchling, who would one day name herself Oravane, made a promise in that moment. She looked at her siblings, and they looked back with understanding. They would remember this human. They would honor his sacrifice. They would make sure the galaxy never forgot the guardian who died, protecting those he barely knew. Simply because it was the right thing to do. Around them, the cave was silent, except for the sound of their grief. 12 dead hunters lay scattered through the passages, and in the center of it all, one dead human who had faced impossible odds and won. Not for glory or reward, but because someone needed protecting, and he was there to answer the call. The hatchlings stayed close to Daniel's body through the night, keeping vigil over the one who had kept vigil over them. And as the first light of dawn crept into the cave, the golden hatchling raised her head and breathed fire for the first time. Small flames, weak and uncertain, but fire nonetheless. It was a beginning, a promise, and a memorial to the human who had taught them what it meant to be truly strong. 20 years had passed since the day Daniel Cross died in a cave on HFY Prime. The galaxy had changed in that time. New conflicts had risen and fallen. Species had made peace and then broken it. The Galactic Council had expanded, claiming more worlds under their authority. But one planet remained untouched. Avoided by most. Feared by some, HFY Prime had become known as the Dragon World, home to creatures that wanted nothing to do with galactic politics. Commander Lisa Grant stood on the bridge of the research vessel Discovery, looking at the planet below. She was 32 years old, career, military, and she had never been more nervous in her life. Her orders were simple: make contact with the dragons, establish communication, determine if they posed a threat to human colonies in nearby systems. Beside her stood Dr. Peter Hughes, a xenobiologist who had spent his entire career studying alien species. He was older, maybe 50, with gray hair and excited eyes. For him, this was the opportunity of a lifetime. Dragons were considered myths by most species, creatures from legends that supposedly died out millennia ago. The fact that they existed at all was remarkable. The fact that they were willing to talk was unprecedented. Scans show 5 large life forms in the northern mountains, the ship's sensor operator reported. Each one is approximately 30 meters long. Energy signatures are off the charts. Whatever they are powerful. Lisa took a deep breath. All right. Take us down. Nice and slow. Let them see. We are not a threat. The Discovery descended through the purple sky, passing the twin moons that hung in daylight. The northern mountains came into view, tall peaks covered in snow. As they approached, Lisa saw them, 5 dragons circling the highest mountain, their scales catching sunlight and throwing back colors that should not exist. Gold and crimson, deep blue and brilliant green, one that shimmered like starlight itself. They are beautiful, Peter whispered. The dragons flew closer, surrounding the ship. They moved with grace that seemed impossible for creatures so large. One of them, the golden one, flew directly in front of the bridge viewport. Its eyes met Lisa's, and she felt something in her mind. A presence. A question. She spoke out loud, not knowing if it would work. We come in peace. We want to talk. The presence in her mind grew stronger. Then words formed, clear as if someone spoke beside her. Follow us. Humans. We have much to show you. The dragons turned and flew toward the mountain. Lisa ordered the ship to follow. They landed on a wide plateau near the summit, where snow had been cleared away to reveal smooth stone. The 5 dragons landed around them, their massive bodies settling with surprising gentleness. Lisa and Peter left the ship, walking down the ramp with their hands visible and empty. Up close, the dragons were even more impressive. The golden one approached them, lowering her head to their level. I am Oravane, the dragon said, her voice resonating in their minds. These are my siblings. Skyblade, Emberfang, Nightwing, and Silverclaw. We are the children of Emberscale, and we have been waiting for humans to return to this world. Return? Lisa asked. We have never been here before. One human came, Oravane said, 20 years ago. He changed everything. Come, we will show you. The dragons led them into the mountain through a passage carved smooth by centuries of use. The walls glowed with a soft light that came from crystals embedded in the stone. They descended deep into the mountain, passing through chambers filled with things Lisa could not identify. Dragon artifacts, perhaps, or remnants of their ancient civilization. Finally, they entered a massive chamber. And there, in the center, Lisa saw it, a human body, perfectly preserved in clear crystal that glowed with internal light. The man wore a torn military uniform. His face was peaceful, as if he had fallen asleep. Around the crystal shrine were weapons, rifles, a plasma pistol, a combat knife. And on the walls were carvings, thousands of them, telling a story in pictures and words. Daniel Cross, Oravane said softly. The Guardian. The Protector. The one who taught us what it means to be truly strong. Lisa stepped closer, reading the carved words. She saw dates, service records, the names of 300 children, a court-martial, an exile. She felt her throat tighten as she realized what she was reading. I know this name, she said quietly. I was one of the children. Peter looked at her in surprise. Oravane's eyes widened. 20 years ago, I was 8 years old, Lisa continued. We were on a colony station during an attack. Everyone said we would not make it. Then this soldier appeared. He had a transport ship, but his orders were to evacuate a weapons depot. He looked at us, 300 kids, scared and crying. And he made a choice. She touched the crystal, feeling its warmth. He saved us all. Loaded every child onto that ship and flew us to safety. The military court marshaled him for abandoning the weapons. I never knew what happened to him after that. He came here, Oravane said. Exiled to this world, alone, with nothing. He found our eggs when our mother was dying. She asked him to protect us, and he agreed. He spent 3 months guarding us. When hunters came to steal us, he fought them. 12 armed mercenaries against one human with limited weapons. He killed them all. Oravane's voice grew thick with emotion. But he was wounded. Dying. He held on just long enough to see us hatch. His last act was to protect us one final time, keeping the enemy leader from shooting us. Then he died with his hand on my scales, giving us his memories, his strength, his courage. Peter had tears running down his face. Lisa stood frozen, staring at the man who had saved her life twice over. First as a child, then as an example of what a human should be. We inherited his memories, Oravane continued. We know everything he experienced. The children he saved. The trial that punished him for doing what was right. The exile. The loneliness. But also, his determination, his refusal to abandon those who needed protection. He was not the strongest warrior. He was not the smartest soldier. But he had something rare. He had a heart that chose others over himself. Every single time, she gestured to the carvings on the walls. We have spent 20 years studying humanity through his memories and through our own observations. We have seen your wars and your peace, your cruelty and your kindness, your fear and your courage, and we have decided something. The other 4 dragons moved closer, forming a circle around the humans. We want an alliance, Oravane said. Not with your galactic council. Not with your governments. With humanity itself. Because Daniel Cross showed us what humans can be at their best. If more humans can learn to be like him, to put protection above profit and moral courage above orders, then humanity has a place among the stars that matters. Lisa found her voice. What kind of alliance? Partnership, Skyblade answered. his scales deep blue and wise. "We have knowledge older than your civilization. You have adaptability we lack. Together we could protect worlds that need protection. Stop those who prey on the weak. Build something better than what exists now. But first," Oravane said, "you must do something for us. You must tell Daniel's story. Your people exiled him, dishonored him, forgot him. We have not. Every year on the day he died, we perform a ritual. We want you to see it." They waited in the chamber as the day passed into evening. As darkness fell outside, the 5 dragons led Lisa and Peter back to the surface. The stars were coming out, brilliant in the clear mountain sky. The dragons arranged themselves on the plateau, forming a line. Then, as one, they raised their heads and breathed fire into the sky. The flames were not random, they moved with purpose, forming shapes in the darkness. Letters. Words. A name written in fire 50 meters tall, visible for hundreds of kilometers. Daniel Cross. The letters burned bright gold, holding their shape for long minutes before fading. "We do this every year," Oravane said. "We raise his name in fire. We make sure the universe knows that here, on this forgotten world, a human did something so brave and so selfless that dragons remember him. We will continue doing this until the stars themselves go dark." Lisa wiped tears from her eyes. She pulled out her communication device and recorded everything. The shrine, the story, the ritual of fire, all of it. "The military needs to see this," she said. "Everyone needs to see this. They dishonored a hero. They need to know what they did." "Yes," Oravane agreed. "They do. And more than that, they need to learn from him. Daniel Cross showed us that true strength is not about power or weapons. It is about what you choose to do with that power. He chose protection. He chose sacrifice. He chose others over himself." She looked directly at Lisa. "You were one of his children. One of the 300 he saved. Now you must carry his message forward. Tell humanity what he did here. Tell them what it cost him. And tell them that dragons remember loyalty, that we will ally with those who prove themselves worthy of the example he set." Peter spoke up. "What about his body? Should we take him home? Give him a proper burial on Earth?" All 5 dragons responded at once, their voices firm. "No. He stays here. This is where he fell. This is where he made his stand. This is where he became legend. We are his family now, as he was ours. We will guard him as he guarded us." Lisa understood. Daniel Cross had died protecting these dragons. It was fitting that they protect him in return. Forever. "I will tell his story," Lisa promised. "I will make sure everyone knows what he did. For us as children. For the dragons. For what was right." "Then we have an accord," Oravane said. "Return to your people. Share what you have learned. And when you are ready, when humanity has honored Daniel Cross as he deserves, return to us. We will discuss this alliance further." As Lisa and Peter returned to their ship, Lisa looked back one more time at the mountain. 5 dragons stood watch on the plateau, guardians of a guardian. The crystallized body of Daniel Cross rested in the heart of the mountain, surrounded by honor and memory and love. She had come here expecting to find monsters. Instead, she found proof that sacrifice was never wasted. That doing what was right mattered. Even if the whole galaxy said you were wrong, that one person could change everything, if they had the courage to stand when others would run. The Discovery lifted off into the night sky. Behind them, 5 dragons watched until the ship disappeared among the stars. Then they returned to the shrine, keeping vigil over the human who had taught them everything that mattered. The recording went viral within hours of Lisa releasing it. Every human colony, every station, every ship in space, watched the footage of the crystal shrine. They saw the carvings telling Daniel Cross's story. They heard Oravane's testimony about his sacrifice. And they watched 5 dragons write his name in fire across the night sky of HFY Prime. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The 300 children Daniel had saved, now adults scattered across human space, came forward with their own stories. They remembered the soldier who disobeyed orders to rescue them. They remembered his calm voice as he loaded them onto the transport ship, promising they would be safe. Many had built their lives around the example he set that day. One was now a doctor, running free clinics in frontier colonies. Another commanded a search and rescue unit that had saved thousands over the years. A third had become a teacher, educating children about moral courage and making difficult choices. All of them said the same thing. Daniel Cross had saved more than their lives. He had shown them what kind of person they should try to be. The military brass tried to control the narrative at first. They released statements about operational necessities and chain of command. They argued that one man's heroism did not erase the need for discipline and order, but the public would not hear it. Protests erupted on Earth and across the colonies. People demanded answers. They demanded justice. They demanded that Daniel Cross be honored, not hidden away as an embarrassment. The pressure became too much. 6 months after Lisa's recording spread through human space, the Earth Defense Force held a ceremony. Military leaders, politicians, and thousands of citizens gathered at the Wall of Heroes in Geneva. Lisa stood in the front row, wearing her dress uniform, tears streaming down her face. The Secretary of Defense approached the wall and unveiled a new name carved into the black stone: Daniel Cross. Below it were the words, Guardian of Dragons, Protector of the Innocent, Hero of Humanity. We were wrong, the Secretary said. His voice broadcast across every human world. We punished a man for doing what was right. We valued weapons over children. We chose rules over compassion. Daniel Cross showed us what we should have been, and we cast him out for it. That ends today. From this moment forward, his name stands among our greatest heroes. His example will be taught to every soldier, every leader, every citizen, and we will strive to be worthy of the sacrifice he made. The crowd erupted in applause that lasted for 10 minutes. But for Lisa, the ceremony felt incomplete. Daniel's name was on a wall on Earth, but his body rested on HFY Prime, surrounded by the dragons he died protecting. He had become a symbol, but she wanted to ensure his message lived on in more than just words. She proposed something radical: a new military unit, built entirely around Daniel's philosophy. Not conquerors, not soldiers of expansion, but guardians, people trained to protect the vulnerable, regardless of species or politics. The proposal went through channels for months, debated by committees and councils. Some called it idealistic. Others called it necessary. The dragons made the decision easier. Aravane sent a message to Earth. She offered to train the first class herself. She offered dragon knowledge, ancient wisdom, and a partnership that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. But only if humanity proved itself worthy. Only if they built something that honored what Daniel Cross had stood for. The Guardian Corps was approved. Lisa resigned her commission and became its first commander. Within a year, she had 500 volunteers. They came from every human world, from every background, former soldiers and civilian volunteers, young and old, all united by a single idea. Power means nothing without the moral courage to use it, protecting those who cannot protect themselves. The first class traveled to HFY Prime for training. Lisa led them up the mountain to the plateau where 5 dragons waited. The recruits, tough men and women who had seen combat, stood in nervous silence as Aravane approached. You come here to learn, the Golden Dragon said, her voice filling their minds. But first, you must understand what you are truly training for. Follow me. Follow me. She led them into the mountain, to the crystal shrine. The recruits stood before Daniel Cross's preserved body, reading the carvings, seeing the evidence of his last stand. Lisa watched their faces change as understanding hit them. This was not about glory. This was not about medals or honor. This was about the hardest choice any warrior could make: to sacrifice everything for people you barely knew, simply because it was right. Daniel Cross was not the strongest human, Aravane said. He was not the fastest or the smartest. He had limited weapons, no support, and no hope of rescue. But he had something more important. He had a heart that put others first. He saw eggs that were not his species, not his responsibility, not his problem, and he chose to protect them anyway. She looked at each recruit in turn. You will face impossible choices. You will be outnumbered, outgunned, and alone. Orders will tell you one thing, but your conscience will demand another. In those moments, you must choose. And if you choose as Daniel chose, you may die as Daniel died. But you will die knowing you did what mattered. You will die a guardian. The training lasted 6 months. The dragons taught them combat techniques refined over millennia. They taught them patience and strategy. They taught them to think beyond themselves, to see the bigger picture. But most importantly, they taught them Daniel's philosophy. Strength without compassion is tyranny. Power without protection is meaningless. Victory without honor is just another word for defeat. Lisa watched the recruits transform. They came as soldiers. They left as something more. Guardians who understood that their purpose was not to fight wars but to prevent them, not to conquer but to protect, not to destroy but to preserve. When the training ended, Oravane gathered all 500 recruits on the plateau. Night was falling, and the stars were coming out. Tonight is the anniversary of Daniel's death, she said. Tonight we perform the ritual we have done for 21 years. But this year, you will witness it not as outsiders, but as family. You carry his legacy now. You are his children, just as we are. The 5 dragons spread their wings and took flight, circling the mountain peak. Then they breathed fire into the sky, and Daniel Cross's name appeared in letters of flame, 50 meters tall. The recruits stood in awed silence, watching the fire burn against the darkness. But this year was different. As the dragon's fire faded, Lisa stepped forward. She raised a flare gun and fired it into the sky. The flare burst into brilliant light, joining the fading letters. Then another recruit fired, and another. 500 flares rose into the night, surrounding Daniel's name with stars of human making. The message was clear. Dragons remembered Daniel Cross. But now, humans would remember too. And they would ensure his sacrifice meant something. The Guardian Corps spread across human space over the next 5 years. They responded to disasters, evacuated colonies under threat, and protected trade routes from pirates. They did not start wars. They did not claim territory. They simply showed up wherever people needed protection and did their job. Other species noticed. The Galactic Council, which had long dismissed humanity as barbaric warmongers, began to see a different side. Here were humans who fought only when necessary, who valued life over profit, who kept their word even when it cost them. Slowly, carefully, other species began to request guardian assistance. A mining colony under threat from raiders, a diplomatic mission needing security, a refugee camp requiring protection from hostile forces. The Guardians said yes to all of them. Human, alien, it did not matter. If someone needed protection, a guardian would stand between them and danger, just as Daniel had stood between the dragon eggs and the hunters, just as he had stood between 300 children and certain death. 10 years after Daniel's story became known, humanity was offered a permanent seat on the Galactic Council, not because of military might or economic power, but because they had proven something rare in the galaxy. They had proven they could be trusted, that they would honor their promises, that they would protect the weak, even at cost to themselves. Lisa stood in the council chambers, now a general and the official ambassador of the Guardian Corps. Around her sat representatives from 100 species, all watching as she spoke. We accept this honor, she said, but we do so with humility. 10 years ago, we were a species that exiled our heroes and valued weapons over children. We made terrible choices. We hurt people who deserved better. But we learned, we changed, and we owe that change to one man who refused to compromise his values, even when it cost him everything. She pulled out a small holographic projector and activated it. The image of Daniel Cross appeared, standing in his torn uniform, hand resting on a dragon egg. Behind him, The 5 hatchlings watched with ancient eyes. This is Daniel Cross. Most of you have heard his story. But I want you to understand what he means to us. He is not just a hero. He is a mirror. He shows us what we should be when we strip away all excuses, all justifications, all the easy reasons to turn away from what is right. The hologram shifted, showing the crystal shrine, the carvings, the weapons. He died on a forgotten world, protecting creatures he barely knew. No one witnessed his final stand except the beings he saved. He had no expectation of reward or recognition. He did it simply because someone needed protection, and he was able to provide it. The hologram changed again, showing 5 dragons writing a name in fire across the night sky. Dragons remember loyalty. For 20 years, they honored him when we did not. They raised his name in fire, keeping his memory alive. Now we honor him too, and more than that. We try to live up to the example he set. She looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives. Humanity seeks this council seat, not to gain power, but to accept responsibility. We want to be the species that stands for the vulnerable, that protects the weak, that chooses compassion over profit, and courage over comfort. We want to be worthy of the sacrifice Daniel Cross made, and the faith the dragons placed in us. There was silence for a moment. Then, one by one, the council members stood. It was a gesture of respect, of acknowledgement. Humanity had been tested and had proven itself. Not through conquest or domination, but through the example of one exiled soldier who refused to compromise his values. The vote was unanimous. Humanity joined the Galactic Council. That night, Lisa returned to Ashvar Prime. She found Oravane on the plateau, watching the stars. "We did it," Lisa said simply. "Council seat, full membership. They respect us now. They respect Daniel," Oravane corrected gently. "You are simply living up to his example." "Maybe," Lisa agreed. "But that is enough. That is everything." They stood together in comfortable silence. Then Oravane spoke again. "Do you know what I think about most? In those last moments, when Daniel was dying, he smiled. He was in pain, bleeding out, knowing he would never see his home again. But he smiled because he saw us hatch, because he knew we were safe. That is who he was. His own life mattered less than the lives he protected. That is who we all should be," Lisa said. Oravane nodded. "Yes. And thanks to him, thanks to the legacy he left, maybe you will be. Maybe all of us will be." As if on cue, the sun began to set. The sky turned colors that Earth never saw. Purples and deep blues with streaks of gold. And there, on the mountain plateau, a dragon and a human stood together, united by the memory of a guardian who had taught them both what it meant to be truly strong. Far below, in the crystal shrine, Daniel Cross rested in eternal peace. His body preserved, his story told, his name honored across the galaxy. He had died alone on a frozen world, exiled and forgotten by the government he served. But the dragons had remembered. They had raised his name in fire, year after year, keeping his memory alive when no one else would. And now, because they remembered, everyone remembered. His sacrifice had not been wasted. His choice had mattered, and his legacy would live on in every guardian who stood watch over the vulnerable, in every human who chose courage over comfort, in every act of protection performed simply because it was right. Daniel Cross had been one man with limited weapons, facing impossible odds. But he had shown the galaxy what humanity could be at its best. And the galaxy, both human and dragon, would never forget. The stars came out, brilliant in the clear mountain air, and somewhere in the night, 5 dragons began their ritual. Fire rose into the darkness, forming letters that burned bright enough to be seen from space. Daniel Cross, guardian, protector, hero. His name raised in fire, now and forever.